Heritage Point presented an imposing facade of expensive tranquility. It was a gated enclave where razor-neat hedges stood like stoic green sentinels, guarding rows of faultlessly symmetrical houses. The lawns resembled emerald carpets, meticulously maintained. The streets remained unnaturally clean, swept of stray leaves or debris almost before they landed. Silence was the prevailing currency, broken only by the discreet, near-inaudible hum of robotic lawnmowers or the occasional soft whir of an electric golf cart, the preferred, almost mandated, mode of transport for navigating the community's spotless pathways. But beneath this placid, highly polished surface, tensions often simmered, frequently stirred, and brought to a boil by Deborah Jenkins. Deborah was not merely a resident. She was a prominent, powerful figure on the Homeowners Association board, the self-styled, fiercely dedicated enforcer of Heritage Point's exhaustive, multi-volume book of rules and regulations. Her sharp features seemed perpetually etched in lines of stern disapproval. She patrolled the neighborhood daily in her customized, high-speed golf cart, dispensing unsolicited advice on garden aesthetics and issuing passive-aggressive warnings about perceived infractions with the confidence of a feudal lord surveying her domain. Her obsession was absolute order, unquestioning conformity, and above all, the swift, unimpeded flow of movement along her community's sidewalks. Anything, or anyone, that deviated, delayed, or dared to appear out of place was immediately subject to her withering scrutiny and, often, her vocal displeasure. Neighbors, while sometimes benefiting from her rigorous oversight, often referred to her in hushed tones, a whispered nickname that perfectly captured her potent blend of entitlement and the aggressive certainty with which she imposed her will, Karen. Into this rigidly controlled, aesthetically obsessed environment moved the Thompson family. They brought with them a different kind of order, one dictated not by HOA covenants, but by the unpredictable demands of global security and the gentle, patient rhythms of caring for their daughter. Mark Thompson was a man accustomed to assessing risk. His job title, Regional Security Officer with the U.S. Department of State's Diplomatic Security Service, DSS, sounded bureaucratic, but the reality was stark. He spent his professional life protecting American embassies and personnel in high-threat, often volatile environments overseas. His world involved calculated risks, constant vigilance, threat analysis, and rapid, decisive response, skills he rarely anticipated needing within the manicured, seemingly sterile calm of Heritage Point. His wife, Maria, worked in the complex field of international development consulting. Her focus was on building bridges, fostering cooperation, understanding cultural nuances, a perspective often starkly contrasting with the security-focused world Mark inhabited. Their 10-year-old daughter, Lili, was the bright, joyful center of their universe. Lili had cerebral palsy, a neurological condition affecting her muscle control, coordination, and balance. It required her to use a brightly colored, customized walker for mobility, providing essential support as she navigated the world. Despite the undeniable physical challenges her condition presented, Lili possessed a fierce, unyielding determination and an infectious, bubbling giggle that could lighten any room. She loved the simple warmth of sunshine on her face, the feel of cool grass beneath her feet, during careful moments when she could safely sit on it, and the slow, deliberate, triumphant journey she often made down the sidewalk to visit her best friend, Emily, who lived just 2 houses away. Her walker, brightly decorated with stickers and ribbons, was her key to independence, but it made her progress necessarily measured, careful, deliberate. Each step was a conscious effort, a small victory. To Deborah Jenkins, however, Lili's measured pace wasn't a victory. It was an intolerable irritation. The colorful walker wasn't a mobility aid. It was an unsightly obstruction, disrupting the visual harmony and, more importantly, the flow of Heritage Point's pristine sidewalks. Deborah's displeasure initially manifested subtly, or what passed for subtle in her world. Tight smiles offered upon encountering Lili that never reached her cold eyes. Pointed, audible sighs as her golf cart was forced to slow down or maneuver carefully around the small girl navigating the concrete path. The first direct encounter felt like a warning shot. Lili was making her way home from Emily's, concentrating hard, her walker clicking softly. Deborah zipped up behind her in the golf cart, stopping abruptly, far too close for comfort. "Lili," Deborah had called out, her voice sharp, impatient. "You're holding up traffic." The sidewalk was empty except for them. Lili startled, looking back with wide, slightly fearful eyes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Jenkins. I'm going as fast as I can." "Well, it's not fast enough," Deborah had retorted, tapping an impatient rhythm on her steering wheel. "Some of us have important places to be. Try to be more considerate." She then sped around Lili, forcing the child to wobble precariously close to the edge of the grass. Lili hadn't fallen, but she had arrived home shaken, tears welling. After that incident, Deborah escalated her campaign. She began making pointed comments to other neighbors, often within earshot of Maria or Mark. "Such a shame children can't just run freely and play like they used to." She'd lament loudly while inspecting someone's rose bushes. Or, observing Lili's careful progress from her porch. "Takes her an absolute eternity to get anywhere, doesn't it? Really holds everyone up on the pathways." Maria, deeply protective and weary of the passive aggression, tried engaging Deborah directly one afternoon, hoping reason might prevail. She found Deborah inspecting sprinklers near the Thompson's property line. "Deborah," Maria began calmly, keeping her voice even. "I wanted to talk to you about Lili and the sidewalks. We understand patience is sometimes needed, given her walker, but she has cerebral palsy. She's doing her very best, and she has just as much right to use the community pathways safely as anyone else." Deborah turned slowly, sniffing dismissively, her expression hardening. "Patience wears thin when it becomes a constant, daily inconvenience, Maria. Perhaps more effort is required on her part." She paused, letting the cruel implication hang heavy in the air. Or perhaps alternative routes should be considered. The perfectly manicured, often wet grass alongside the sidewalk was clearly implied. The suggestion that Lili wasn't trying hard enough, that her disability was a matter of insufficient effort or consideration for others, struck Maria speechless with its casual cruelty. She simply turned and walked away, refusing to dignify the comment with further argument. Mark, when Maria recounted the conversation later, felt a familiar chill. Accustomed to assessing threats, analyzing behavioral patterns, he recognized the escalating hostility in Deborah's demeanor, the rigid set of her jaw, the way her eyes lingered on Lili with undisguised annoyance. It wasn't just impatience, it felt like targeted animosity. He didn't voice his deepest fears to Maria, not wanting to alarm her further, but drawing on years of professional paranoia. Now sharply activated by raw paternal instinct, he installed a new, state-of-the-art, wider-angle security camera overlooking their front yard and the stretch of sidewalk directly in front of their house. It felt like bringing his overseas vigilance protocols home, an unsettling intrusion, but a precaution he felt increasingly, grimly necessary. The day it happened began like almost every other Saturday in the unnaturally serene bubble of Heritage Point. Sunny, cloudless, quiet, save for the distant, polite chirping of birds nesting in the meticulously tidy, HOA-approved trees. Lili Thompson was embarking on her familiar, cherished journey along the sidewalk towards her friend Emily's house. Her brightly colored walker, adorned with a new unicorn sticker, clicked softly, rhythmically, on the smooth concrete. She was deeply focused, concentrating on placing each foot carefully, precisely. Each independent step was a source of immense pride, a testament to her relentless work in physical therapy. From the opposite direction, Deborah Jenkins approached in her golf cart. Her face was set in a determined frown, her lips pressed into a thin line of impatience. She was running late for an important HOA landscaping committee meeting, one she chaired with an iron fist, and Lili was directly in her path, moving at what Deborah perceived, in her perpetually hurried state, as a glacial, deliberately obstructive pace. Instead of waiting the few seconds it would take for Lili to reach Emily's walkway, or politely asking the child to move aside onto the grass verge, Deborah Jenkins made a different, drastically uglier choice. She stopped her golf cart abruptly, braking sharply so that the front bumper came to rest mere inches from the front bar of Lili's walker. The sudden stop startled Lili, making her gasp. "Lili, I told you, you need to move faster." Deborah snapped, her voice sharp, cutting, laced with undisguised annoyance. You are blocking the entire sidewalk." Lili looked up, her eyes wide with apprehension. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Jenkins," she stammered, intimidated. "I'm going as fast as I can. My legs get tired." "That's not good enough," Deborah retorted harshly. "People have places to be, schedules to keep. You are a constant obstruction. You need to learn to run like other children." The cruel, ignorant words hung heavy and poisonous in the quiet morning air. Before Lili could fully process the verbal assault, before she could even attempt to maneuver her walker out of the way, Deborah reached behind her seat. She produced a short, coiled length of thick nylon tow strap, the kind used for pulling disabled golf carts or securing equipment, something she apparently kept readily accessible in her vehicle. In a shocking, impulsive display of calculated cruelty fueled by impatience and prejudice, Deborah quickly, expertly looped one hooked end of the strap securely around the sturdy metal frame of Lili's walker. She then swiftly leaned over and fastened the other hook firmly onto the rear utility bumper of her golf cart. "Let's just speed things up a bit, shall we?" Deborah declared, her voice hard-edged, devoid of any human warmth. Lili cried out, a sound of sudden, sharp fear. "No, Mrs. Jenkins, please, don't." Her small hands tightened instinctively, desperately, on the handles of her walker. But Deborah Jenkins ignored her terrified pleas completely. She climbed back into the driver's seat, her face set in grim determination. She pressed the accelerator. The electric golf cart lurched forward with a sudden, silent surge of power. Lili, clinging desperately to the handles of her essential mobility device, was instantly yanked off her feet. The walker, caught by the strap, stayed mostly upright, rolling forward. But Lili was dragged helplessly behind it, her small body scraping violently against the rough, unforgiving texture of the asphalt sidewalk. She screamed, a raw, piercing sound of pure, unadulterated terror and searing physical pain. The cart towed her, bumping and scraping, along the concrete. Deborah wasn't driving at top speed by golf cart standards, perhaps only 8 or 10 miles per hour, but for a small child being unwillingly, brutally dragged, it was terrifyingly, dangerously fast. 40 meters. Approximately 130 feet. 40 meters of scraping, burning, abrasive asphalt against Lili's exposed legs and arms. 40 meters of the strap pulling tight, threatening to wrench the walker from her desperate grip. 40 meters of the world becoming a terrifying blur of motion, noise, and paralyzing fear. Deborah finally brought the cart to a jerky stop near the entrance to Emily's driveway. Perhaps her only intention, in her warped sense of entitlement, had been to forcibly move Lili out of her perceived path. But the act itself, regardless of the intended duration or final destination, was monstrous, abhorrent, criminal. With a grunt of effort, she quickly unhooked the tow strap from the walker, leaving Lili crumpled in a sobbing heap on the hard ground beside her now stationary mobility aid. "Now," Deborah muttered venomously, glaring down at the injured, terrified child, "maybe you'll think twice about dawdling and getting in everyone's way next time." Without another glance, without any sign of concern or remorse, Deborah Jenkins climbed back into her golf cart and drove off briskly towards her landscaping committee meeting, as if nothing remotely extraordinary or horrific had just occurred. A neighbor, Mr. Henderson, a kind retiree meticulously watering his prize-winning roses in his front yard nearby, had witnessed the entire, unbelievable event unfold. He dropped his garden hose, water gushing unheeded onto the perfect lawn. He shouted after Deborah, his voice hoarse with shock and outrage, "Deborah, stop! What in God's name are you doing?" Seeing Deborah ignore him completely and drive away without a backward glance, Mr. Henderson immediately fumbled in his pocket for his cell phone, his hands shaking with adrenaline and disbelief. He dialed 911 with trembling fingers. As he breathlessly reported the assault, describing the golf cart, identifying Deborah Jenkins by name, detailing the dragging of the injured child, another car pulled swiftly, tires squealing slightly, to the curb just feet away. It was Mark Thompson, returning home unexpectedly early from a quick Saturday morning errand. He saw Mr. Henderson gesturing frantically towards the street, phone pressed to his ear. Then his eyes locked onto the small figure crumpled on the pavement near Emily's driveway. He saw Lili. He saw her bright clothes torn and dirty. He saw the raw, red scrapes blooming on her arms and legs, blood welling ominously. He saw her small body shaking uncontrollably with sobs. He saw her walker standing beside her, a toe strap still incongruously attached. Mark's blood ran cold. A wave of icy dread washed over him, momentarily paralyzing. Then, years of training, years of responding to crises, kicked in, overlaid now with the primal, ferocious instinct of a father seeing his child harmed. He leaped from the car, engine still running, door left open. His mind instantly shifted into damage control, assessment, response mode. First priority, Lili. He knelt beside her on the rough pavement, deliberately keeping his voice calm, even despite the volcanic fury raging inside him. Lilybug. Lili, honey, daddy's here. It's okay. Are you okay? Can you tell me what hurts? He quickly, gently assessed her injuries. Significant abrasions, road rash, covered large areas of her legs and arms. Potential friction burns were developing rapidly. Her clothes were torn, embedded with grit. Thankfully, there were no obvious signs of broken bones, but her terror, her shock, was palpable, radiating off her in waves. Just then, Maria rushed out of their house, alerted by the commotion, perhaps by Mr. Henderson's shouts or the sound of Mark's car stopping abruptly. Her face, initially etched with confusion, crumpled instantly into a mask of pure horror as she saw Lili on the ground, injured and crying. She ran to her daughter's side, gathering her gently into her arms. While Maria focused entirely on comforting Lili, murmuring soft reassurances, Mark stood up slowly. His eyes, sharp and analytical even now, scanned the scene with professional detachment overlaying paternal rage. He noted the discarded toe strap still hooked to the walker. He saw the distinct, horrifying scrape marks gouged into the asphalt sidewalk, leading back down the street like a trail of violence. He saw Mr. Henderson, still on the phone with 911, providing crucial eyewitness details. Mark took out his own cell phone. His movements were precise, economical. He dialed 911 again, ensuring a second report, adding critical context. He identified himself clearly, calmly, professionally. "This is Special Agent Mark Thompson," he stated, his voice level but carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. He provided his agency affiliation, U.S. Department of State, Diplomatic Security Service, and his badge number. "I am reporting an aggravated assault perpetrated against my minor daughter, Lili Thompson, age 10. The incident occurred minutes ago at." He gave the precise location on their street. "The suspect is Deborah Jenkins." He provided her full name and house address within Heritage Point. "The suspect utilized a golf cart as a weapon to intentionally drag my daughter, who has cerebral palsy and uses a walker, approximately 40 meters along the asphalt sidewalk. My daughter has sustained injuries." The suspect fled the scene eastbound in the golf cart immediately following the assault. He paused briefly. "Request immediate police and EMS response to my location. Be advised, consider the golf cart itself as the weapon used in the commission of this felony assault." His professional identification, the clear, concise, and chilling report of a violent felony involving a disabled child, guaranteed the highest possible priority dispatch. He then made a second, very brief, encrypted call using a separate, agency-issued device. He connected to the DSS Command Center watch officer in Washington, D.C. "This is RSO Thompson, postcode domestic," he stated, using standard protocol. "Reporting a security incident involving a dependent family member. Location is my personal residence, Heritage Point. Incident involves aggravated assault on my daughter by a neighbor. Local law enforcement and EMS are responding currently. Requesting official log entry. No immediate DSS assistance required at this time. Will provide updates as situation develops." Thompson clear. It was standard, mandatory procedure for DSS personnel involved in any significant security or criminal incident, even domestic ones, ensuring the agency's protective oversight mechanisms were aware and could provide support or intervention if the situation escalated or involved jurisdictional complexities. Logged. Documented. The response from local law enforcement and emergency services was incredibly fast, catalyzed by the nature of the call and potentially amplified by the dispatcher recognizing the federal agent identifier. Within 6 minutes, The quiet suburban street was flooded with the flashing lights and wailing sirens of multiple police cruisers and an ambulance. Officers spilled out, their expressions immediately grim as they took in the scene. The small, injured child being comforted by her mother, the visible scrape marks staining the sidewalk, the discarded toe strap, the other witnesses. They activated their body-worn cameras as they approached. Paramedics took over Lili's care immediately, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the morning's violence. They carefully cleaned her wounds, applied bandages, checked for concussion or other hidden injuries. Lili's frightened whimpers and occasional sharp cries of pain tore at Mark and Maria's hearts, fueling Mark's cold resolve. Police officers began securing the scene, meticulously photographing the scrape marks on the asphalt, the walker with the strap still attached, collecting the strap itself as key evidence. An alert, a bolo, be on the lookout, was immediately broadcast over police radio for Deborah Jenkins and her specific, customized golf cart. She was located just moments later, pulling into her own pristine driveway 2 blocks away, looking flustered but attempting an air of defiant normalcy. When uniformed officers approached her cautiously, advising her she was being detained in relation to an assault investigation, she initially tried to bluster and minimize. "Assault? That's ridiculous," she exclaimed, stepping out of the golf cart, smoothing her wrinkle-free slacks. "It was just a little nudge. A misunderstanding. Ma'am, we have witnesses stating you dragged a child behind your golf cart," the lead officer stated calmly, his body camera recording her every word and expression. "Dragged?" Deborah scoffed, though a flicker of panic entered her eyes. "Don't be absurd. The girl is far too slow, you see. Always dawdling, blocking the pathways. It's a constant problem. I was simply assisting her along, helping her learn to move a bit faster for everyone's convenience." Her complete, shocking lack of remorse, her casual cruelty, her attempt to frame a violent act as assistance, was chillingly apparent, captured clearly and irrefutably on the officer's body cameras. Faced with Mr. Henderson's unwavering, detailed eyewitness account, Lili's visible and medically documented injuries, the damning physical evidence of the toe strap and scrape marks, and the formal statement provided by Mark Thompson, whose professional credentials added significant weight, Deborah Jenkins was placed under arrest on the spot. The charges were immediate, read to her formally as she was handcuffed: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, the golf cart being legally defined as such in this context; felony child abuse causing injury; unlawful imprisonment by restraining Lili with the strap and cart; reckless endangerment. Her expensive, customized golf cart, the instrument of her crime, was carefully photographed, then impounded as critical evidence. The arrest of Deborah Jenkins, a prominent HOA board member, the self-appointed guardian of Heritage Point's rigid order, for such a brutal, shocking act sent seismic shockwaves through the insulated community and rapidly rippled outward. Local news outlets picked up the story quickly, drawn by the jarring contrast between the idyllic setting and the vicious nature of the crime. Reports emphasized the victim's young age, her disability, the alleged use of a golf cart as a weapon, and the perpetrator's position of authority within the community. The Heritage Point HOA board convened an emergency, closed-door meeting that same afternoon. Facing intense pressure and potential legal liability, they swiftly, unanimously voted to immediately remove Deborah Jenkins from her position on the board. They issued a carefully worded public apology condemning her alleged actions in the strongest possible terms, expressing sympathy for the Thompson family, and pledging full cooperation with the investigation. Support, genuine and heartfelt, poured in for the Thompson family from neighbors horrified by the incident. Meals arrived unsolicited. Offers of help with childcare, errands, anything needed, were constant. Many residents expressed their profound outrage and deep shame that such a thing could happen within their gates, perpetrated by someone they knew, someone who held power over them. Lili's physical wounds began the slow process of healing. The extensive road rash left angry red marks that eventually faded into pale scars, permanent reminders etched onto her young skin. The emotional trauma, however, ran deeper, burrowing into her sense of safety and trust. Nightmares plagued her sleep. Fear of golf carts, loud noises, and even familiar sidewalks became significant hurdles. Intensive therapy, specialized for trauma and children with disabilities, became a necessary part of her recovery, alongside immense, constant reassurance and patient support from her parents. Her brightly colored walker, damaged and scraped during the dragging incident, felt tainted by the memory. It was replaced with a brand new, even more vibrant model, hot pink with sparkling streamers, chosen enthusiastically by Lili herself during a special shopping trip. It was a small but significant symbol of her reclaiming her mobility, her spirit, her refusal to be defined by the attack. Mark Thompson, while his primary focus remained steadfastly on Lili's recovery and supporting Maria through the emotional fallout, also ensured the official gears turned appropriately behind the scenes. He provided detailed, objective follow-up statements to the lead detective assigned to the criminal case. His formal report to the Diplomatic Security Service Command Center outlined the incident factually, but necessarily included details about the targeted nature of the assault on his disabled daughter within their assigned domestic residence. He underscored, professionally but pointedly, the specific vulnerabilities faced by DSS personnel and their families, even in seemingly secure, affluent American suburban environments. This report, coupled with the inherently egregious nature of the crime, a violent assault on a disabled child, caught the attention of senior officials within the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, including those in the division responsible for personnel welfare and family support, and tangentially, the State Department's Office of Civil Rights. While DSS protocol prevented direct interference in the local criminal prosecution, unless specific federal jurisdiction issues arose, which they didn't hear, the case became an internal point of discussion. It served as a stark, sobering reminder of the diverse spectrum of threats, not just political or terrorist-related, but domestic, personal, prejudice-fueled, faced by diplomats and their families, requiring constant reassessment of security postures and support systems. Near the ambulance, as paramedics gently loaded Lili onto a stretcher for transport to the hospital for evaluation, Deborah, seated in the back of the police car, window down, called out desperately to Mark as he stood nearby. "Mark, please, tell them it was an accident. I didn't mean to hurt her. I was just frustrated. She's always so slow." Mark turned slowly, walking deliberately towards the police car. He stopped a few feet away, his face unreadable, his eyes like chips of ice. The attending officer stood beside him, body camera capturing the exchange. "An accident, Deborah?" Mark repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "Is that what you call looping a tow strap around a disabled child's walker and hitting the accelerator? Is that your definition of frustrated?" I just wanted to move her out of the way," Deborah insisted, tears welling now, likely tears of self-pity rather than remorse. "I was late. It wasn't supposed to. She wasn't supposed to fall." "She didn't fall, Deborah," Mark stated flatly, his voice cutting through her excuses. "She was dragged. For over 100 feet. On asphalt. Mr. Henderson saw the entire thing. My security camera," he added, his gaze unwavering, "recorded you deliberately attaching that strap and driving away while my daughter screamed. There is no misunderstanding here. There was no accident. There was only your deliberate, cruel, criminal act." He held her gaze for another moment, letting the weight of his words, the certainty of the evidence, sink in. Then he turned his back on her and walked towards the ambulance where Maria was climbing in beside Lili. Later, during the pretrial phase, Deborah's expensive defense attorney, perhaps sensing the weakness of the accident narrative against the eyewitness and video evidence, floated a desperate, alternative theory. They suggested, in motions filed with the court, that the tow strap might have been left carelessly by recent landscaping contractors working in the area and had become accidentally entangled with Lili's walker, causing her to be pulled briefly when Deborah's cart passed close by. They implied Deborah had stopped immediately upon realizing something was wrong. This attempt to muddy the waters, to create reasonable doubt, was swiftly, devastatingly demolished. The prosecution introduced Mark Thompson's crystal-clear, high-definition security camera footage. The video showed, without ambiguity, Deborah Jenkins stopping her cart, deliberately retrieving the tow strap from within her cart, carefully and intentionally attaching it to Lili's walker, securing the other end to her cart's bumper, climbing back in, ignoring Lili's cries, and accelerating, dragging the child down the street before stopping, detaching the strap and driving away. The footage was damning, irrefutable, and sealed Deborah's fate long before the trial formally concluded. Deborah Jenkins' trial was consequently brief, almost a formality given the overwhelming evidence. The prosecution presented its case efficiently. Mr. Henderson's emotional but clear testimony, the paramedics and doctors' reports detailing Lili's injuries, the physical evidence of the strap and scrape marks, the chilling body camera footage of Deborah's arrest and her callous justifications, and finally, the silent, devastating testimony of Mark Thompson's security camera video. Lili Thompson, after much discussion between her parents, therapists, and the prosecutor's victim advocate, chose to make a very brief statement allowed under victim impact rules. Accompanied by Maria and her therapist, standing small but resolute before the judge, she spoke clearly into the microphone, her voice trembling only slightly. "Mrs. Jenkins said I was too slow," Lili stated, looking directly at the judge, not at the defendant's table. "I'm not slow. I have cerebral palsy. I have to be careful when I walk. That's not the same as being slow." She paused, took a breath. "Being careful is smart. Hurting people is not." Simple words, delivered with profound, heartbreaking dignity. They resonated through the silent courtroom more powerfully than any legal argument. The defense offered little in rebuttal. They couldn't refute the video. They couldn't discredit the eyewitness. Their attempts to portray Deborah as a stressed, overly zealous community volunteer fell completely flat against the stark reality of her actions. She was found guilty by the jury on all major counts after minimal deliberation. At the sentencing, the judge delivered a blistering condemnation before imposing sentence. He cited the heinous, predatory nature of the crime, the deliberate targeting of a uniquely vulnerable child due to her disability, the shocking abuse of perceived community standing, and the defendant's staggering, persistent lack of remorse throughout the proceedings. He handed down a lengthy state prison sentence, ensuring Deborah Jenkins would spend significant time incarcerated. Additionally, substantial financial restitution and punitive damages were ordered. The court mandated the liquidation of her significant assets, including the forced sale of her pristine, meticulously maintained Heritage Point home, to cover Lili's extensive ongoing medical and therapeutic costs, future potential needs related to the trauma, and significant punitive damages awarded for the violation of Lili's rights and the profound suffering inflicted. Deborah Jenkins, the woman who terrorized her privileged neighborhood with arbitrary rules and a weaponized golf cart, lost everything: her home, her social standing, her carefully curated reputation, and her freedom. As she was led from the courthouse in handcuffs and a standard-issue prison jumpsuit, blinking in the unaccustomed sunlight, she passed directly by a newly installed, brightly colored sign near the entrance: Heritage Point, an accessible and inclusive community. The irony was stark, brutal, and entirely lost on her stony face. The State Department briefing room was cool, dimly lit. Mark Thompson wasn't present, but his report, anonymized and stripped of identifying details, formed the basis for a case study. An image, deliberately blurred but recognizable as Deborah Jenkins' police mugshot, flashed briefly on the large screen. The presenter, a senior official from the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, paused. This incident, involving the assault of a DSS family member by a neighbor due to disability prejudice, occurred not in a high-threat post overseas, but in a gated community in the United States. He let the weight of that sink in. "It serves as a potent reminder," he continued, his voice grave. "Vigilance is required everywhere. Prejudice takes many forms. And as protectors, as advocates, we must remember, cruelty can thrive where silence lives." The image vanished, replaced by statistics on global disability rights violations, but the chilling point had been made. Heritage Point began its own slow, often uncomfortable process of healing and substantive change. The HOA board, under new leadership, implemented mandatory annual sensitivity and disability awareness training for all board members and committee chairs. They conducted a thorough review of their architectural guidelines and community bylaws, proactively identifying and removing barriers to accessibility, ensuring better protection and genuine inclusion for all residents with disabilities. Small but significant changes appeared. Curb cuts were added where none existed. Accessible ramps were installed at the community clubhouse. Rules regarding pathway obstructions were clarified to prioritize safe passage for pedestrians and mobility device users. Neighbors became more mindful, more actively supportive. Interactions were marked by a newfound awareness, a quiet determination to foster a more genuinely welcoming environment. People stopped to chat with Lili, asked about her day, admired her new walker, offered genuine smiles. Lili Thompson, surrounded by unwavering love and the steadfast support of her family and a changed community, continued her journey of recovery and growth. The scars on her skin faded slowly, becoming pale reminders rather than angry wounds. The emotional trauma lessened its grip gradually, though the memory remained, integrated into her story but no longer defining it. Her spirit, fueled by an innate resilience and the fierce advocacy of her parents, shone brighter than ever. She learned to navigate past Deborah's now empty, sold house without flinching, her new walker clicking confidently, rhythmically, on the familiar sidewalk. Mark and Maria watched her progress, their hearts perpetually filled with a complex mixture of residual pain for what she had endured and immense, overwhelming pride in her courage, her strength, her light. Justice had been served, decisively and severely, for Deborah Jenkins. She existed now only as a cautionary tale whispered among residents, a symbol of intolerance vanquished. But the truest, most enduring victory lay in Lili's laughter echoing once more through the quiet, sun-dappled streets of Heritage Point. It was the sound of resilience, the sound of joy reclaimed, a vibrant testament to her enduring spirit and the ultimate, resounding failure of cruelty in the face of courage, community support, and unwavering love.